we are not starting from scratch, and the history I'm familiar with included a written commitment by the university to not reduce the number of sports it offered, let alone that the students were paying for them. I had to disagree with him and side with the swimmer. To my surprise, he emailed me back a short while later that night, thanked me for sharing my views and acknowledged my point. But then he went on to say, it's a little like the family that promised to take its kids to Disneyland, and then the layoff notice came. It was a promise that can't be kept. Well, by then I'd had a beer or two. And so I replied back, except in this case, even with the layoff notice, Mom and Dad are still going to Disneyland, and they're even taking some of their kids with them. But they're not taking all of their kids with them, and the rest they're putting up for adoption. What kind of a family does that? If they had all decided to go to a movie and then go for ice cream afterwards, but did it all together, I'd shut up. Our conversation went on a bit longer, but that was pretty much the high point for me, at least. The second thing I'd like to share with you is my message to the Regents this morning, although I was only given, we were all given only 60 seconds, and I barely got my name out in that amount of time. So I'd like to read it now, and these are remarks that were left with the Regents, and I hope they have time to read them. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to remind and update you about the issue of budget cuts in intercollegiate athletics at UC Davis. We once again ask for your assistance. My objective is solely to see that my alma mater continues to bring honor to itself by living up to its own standards, its own commitments. On April 7th, I wrote to President Udoff with my concerns about how a brand new administration might struggle with the need for budget cuts within the intercollegiate athletics program. My message attempted to highlight the unique circumstances present at UC Davis, circumstances which might not be readily apparent. I won't repeat all that here, but it boils down to a couple of key facts. The students of UC Davis themselves are the largest single funder of intercollegiate athletics, and the university specifically committed in 2003 as part of the core principles to not cut sports. On the morning of April 16th, in this very place, I believe, in a closed-door press conference, 4 teams were indeed cut, effective July 1st. That decision has left many people with a serious problem. Not only did it break with a century-old legacy and betray the trust of 150 directly affected student-athletes, it slammed the door on all those who would follow in their footsteps. Not only did it reduce the university's own core principles of intercollegiate athletics to the stature of a cafeteria menu, it ignored the deliberative conclusions and recommendations of both the Athletics Administrative Advisory Council and the ASUCD Senate. Not only did it fail to take into account the views of the students themselves, the very same students who provide most of the funding for the program, it neglected to properly evaluate the effect of an alumni newly energized by this very issue. And on top of all that, the administration's plan doesn't even fully meet the original budget reduction goal. Though with concessions and caveats, as far as I can tell, that were applied only to that plan, it's apparently close enough. But to me, the worst part of all this is this decision relied solely on a process to which the true stakeholders were not invited to participate. The department claimed it was too complicated. A skeptical view would be that it had much more to do with control of the premise, control of the process, and control of the outcome. In fact, the now published record reflects the telltale signs supporting such views, as by the time it was over, not one but 2 independent faculty members handpicked by the Chancellor's Office itself, had resigned from a key oversight committee over how this matter was being handled and characterized. I cannot put enough emphasis on the standing of those 2 individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, please understand, this is not about ignoring fiscal realities and being unresponsive to the call for additional budget cuts. This is not about preserving or promoting athletics over academics. This is not about the wrongdoing of any particular person, to my knowledge. This is about correcting a bureaucratic misstep before it's too late and making sure the role of intercollegiate athletics at UC Davis, a role with nearly a century of tradition and history behind it, and a role largely paid for by the students themselves, is not fundamentally altered in haste and behind closed doors. I therefore respectfully ask you to ask Chancellor Katehi to rescind the university's decision of April 16th, immediately restore the full program of 27 sports, and to designate a minimum 1-year period of study, which must include appropriate outreach to students, faculty, staff, alumni, and other stakeholders so as to thoroughly consider the department's mission and its means and methods for delivering that mission. That was my message to the Regents. To those gathered here tonight, I say we should not stop. We should not go quietly. We should individually and collectively press this case and at all levels. A budget crisis is not an excuse to damage the soul and reputation of the University of California, Davis. We can do much better than this, and we will. Thank you. Oh, I don't know answers. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Shawty. We communicated through email at one point.
It's an honor.
I know it is. I actually had a question for you. Nona Richardson mentioned that the clientele or the students that were here previously who passed the referendums were no longer here, so basically it doesn't really matter anymore. And I figured you'd be the best person to address this statement of hers, because I believe you are still here, aren't you? And you do still care about each day of that.
We had kids when those guys were here, so I can't speak for them, but I know some of them, and I can say they're pretty together people, and I don't think they would agree, and I think they'd be willing to help back that up. So, yeah, I don't think she's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Paul. All right, our next speaker up is he's the head coach of the Clovis Swim Club, and his son was going to join us next year, but as you guys all know, we had to release him. We were very excited to have, we were all very excited to have Jacob join us as a butterfly. It was going to be fantastic. He was going to fill a slot that we absolutely needed, but unfortunately we couldn't keep him. But luckily, his family stayed involved, and his father's here to talk about his involvement and the future student involvement and what it means for future students.
Is John here? John?
He was here.
He was here?
Maybe bathroom.
All right, is Greg Patterson here?
Yes.
Okay. Let's invite Greg up here.